Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another quick getting started guide for EVE Echoes. Now this time around I've jumped out of my usual Minmatar ships and I am instead in a Galente Algos, because I want to spend today talking about drones. Now before we begin, I do just want to remind you guys, I do have Twitter, I do have Facebook, I do have Patreon, and I do have Discord. Details are on the bottom of the screen now. Come join me, I'm always happy to chat with you guys, get to know you a little bit better, and just to have a little bit of discussion about EVE Echoes and the other mobile games that I play as well. If you do have any questions about this or any of my other videos, or if you have a video that you'd like to see that I haven't already put into my library, do drop me a note in the comment section below. I like to read through my comments, I respond whenever I can. Certainly, as I said, any questions or any suggestions will be gratefully received and answered as I can. But anyway, back to today's video. As I said, I am here in a Galente Algos because I want to talk to you about drones. Now, drones are ultimately high slots. They are mainly, currently in the beta at least, weapons. Ultimately, in EVE Online on PC, there are other types of drones as well, things like mining drones and logistics drones, which are things like shield repairs and armor repairers. But for this particular video, because at this point in the beta, it is only combat drones, ergo I am going to speak only about combat drones. Now, first things first, obviously you need to know which ships can actually use combat drones. So if we open up the Galente Algos, you'll see why I've selected this ship. Here, if we look over the details at the top here, most of these should be fairly familiar to you if you've watched my video on Gunnery. I will put my Gunnery and fitting videos, I will put the details for those in the description to this one, and see if I can get a card on screen now for it. But ultimately, across the top here, going from right to left, you'll see that there are 3 industrial rigs, 3 power grid rigs, 2 low slots, 1 medium slot, and then 3 weird claw marks. The weird claw mark means drone launchers. That means that this particular destroyer, the Algos, has 3 drone launchers. So if we scroll down here on this particular ship, we can have a look at what it does with its particular bonuses, like you've seen with the Thrasher video. Different ships have different bonuses that you get based on your skills. This one has polarizer modules and special mode assault, and we will go over the assault bit later. But for now, we want to see here that if we are skilling into light drone operation, in addition to whatever light drone operation is going to give us, this particular ship will give an additional 15% light drone damage and 10% light drone hit points, more on that in a moment. And for every destroyer command skill we have, that's plus 5% armor hit points. So this is an armor-based ship. Certainly if we have a look on the right here, you can see that there's its shields, there's its armor. The armor is much higher than the shields, and obviously armor is very resistant to electromagnetic and thermal. You should know most of this by now. Go watch my fitting video and my tanking video if you haven't already. The important point that we are going to cover here is in regards to drones. So before we jump in, obviously I think we need to answer the question, what are drones? Well, obviously you should know by now about the different types of turrets that you can fit a ship with, whether that's things like the energy turrets for Mars ships, whether that's projectile turrets for the Minmatar ships, or whether that's the hybrid turrets that Galente and Caldari tend to use. Missiles we'll cover properly in a future video, but are very, very similar to how most of the other turrets work. Drones are very different. Ultimately, think of drones as little ships that you launch that attack on their own. So drones have their own unique stats, which we'll come to in a moment. You saw from the skills here, things like light drone hit points and light drone damage. Ultimately, this is just that light drones will do more damage and have more HP, because yes, drones, you launch them out of your drone tubes, they fly towards your opponent through space, they then orbit at whatever optimal range they have, and they start to fire on your opponent. That means a canny opponent can and will shoot down your drones if you're not careful. That is an important point to remember with drones. You can just obviously send them off to shoot at an enemy, but there is you have to watch to make sure they're not being destroyed. So if we tap on one of the drones here at the top, you'll see on a ship that has launch tubes and has the capability of using drones, you'll come up with this particular screen. Now on the right there, where it says no modules for the slot, the drones box there, that is for any drones that you have at your station that you're currently docked at. Obviously you'll only see this if you're docked at a station. At this particular station, I don't have any drones there as it is in the inventory. All of my drones are already aboard my ship. Now, at the bottom, you'll see that there is a drone bay. A drone bay has a maximum size, 360 meters cubed in regards to the Algos. You'll notice that small drones take up 5 meters cubed, medium drones I think take up 25 or something, I don't remember. We're looking at small drones for this one, so it doesn't really matter, but obviously the bigger the drone, the more space they use. Finally, at the top here, you have the launch tubes. Now, this is where it's important. You'll see here that these launch tubes are all small launch tubes, denoted by the S at the top. That means you can't put medium or large drones in there. They don't fit out the tube. They're going to get stuck. That's going to be a mess for everyone involved. No, you need to put small drones in. Now, ultimately, you do that just by tapping on it and then moving them around with the arrows and tapping where you want these things. It's very, very straightforward. Now, basically, the drone bay, that can be used outside of a station. So if you've got numerous different types of drones, you can put loads of different drones in your drone bay and swap between them as long as you are outside of combat. Once you are in combat, however, you can only use whatever is equipped to your launch tubes. It's also worth mentioning at this point that you'll see here that Algosh has 3 launch tubes. That means it can launch a maximum of 3 drones. Of course, you'll see in a moment when we talk about skills, you need to have a certain amount of skills in order to use drones. Drones do require an investment in skills, a little bit more so than turrets do. But the damage that they can do is terrifying in certain situations. Now, this means that ultimately, if your ship has, for example here, 3 launch tubes, I can launch 3 drones, but if I only have the skills to use 2 drones, I cannot launch and utilize that 3rd launch tube. Of course, the opposite is true as well, that if I have if I've skilled up to be able to use 4 drones, but my ship can only launch 3, then obviously I can only use 3 there. So that's kind of what we want to look at there. I won't go into the rest of the ship's details, ultimately with things like the low slots and all that, other than this one here, which will take just a moment to load. This little beauty is something that if you're going to start using in like drones, you want to have a look at something like a low slot here. I've got the Mark V drone damage amplifier, which does exactly what it says on the tin. I tap that button and my drones deal more damage. It's that simple. But anyway, let's go back and actually have a look at the different drones. Now for this, I'm actually going to close this down, move to the market, so that I can talk about all the different types of drones out there, because there are Minmatar drones, there are Caldari drones, there are Amarr drones, and of course there are Gallente drones, and they all do different things. So I'm just going to load into the market. I do apologise, I'm still out at the lodge at the moment, so Wi-Fi here, as you can see, not particularly great. Right, now that that's loaded, we're going to go to high slots, and of course we're going to scroll down to drones, and you'll see that when this loads now, there are loads of different drone types that are just going to populate now. I'm going to look at the Mark IIIs to compare these. Now the first one to come up, of course, is the Mark III Acolyte. The Mark III Acolyte is the Amarr variant. You'll see that ultimately these are very similar to turret stats and other things that I've covered in other videos. What's important is to look at things like shields, armor, structure, and of course the flight velocity. Now in this particular case, you'll see that as I look here at a Mark III Acolyte, it's got an optimal range of 2.4 kilometers, which means it has to get within 2.4. Doesn't mean that your ship has to be within 2.4, just that the drone has to reach that. And when you launch a drone and send it at a target, of course it has to fly there. Now here with the Amarr ones, the Acolytes, 4,620 meters per second, that is their movement speed. That is one of the slower moving of the different drones. It's fairly hard hitting, but it is slightly slower moving than perhaps, say, if we scroll down here to the Mark III Warrior. The Mark III Warrior is the Minmatar variant, and that's 5,040 meters per second. You see that moves much, much faster and has better shields. And ultimately, their optimal range is slightly lower. This thing moves faster, but doesn't do quite as much damage. Now, of course, between that, you have things like the Gallente Hobgoblin, 3,360 meters per second, fairly decent stats down for most of that. And finally, the Mark III Hornet, which again, 3,780. Again, fairly decent stats, brilliant shields on this one, I have to say. Again, requires you to get fairly up close and personal. But then you go back to that Acolyte there. Sorry, the Acolyte is actually one of the middle moving speeds. Looks like the Caldari is the slow one in this case. Either way, the Minmatar drones, they're the Warriors. those are the faster moving and lighter damage ones. These do less damage than some of the other drones out there, but they are faster moving. Of course, you can look down like at the medium drones here, infiltrators, Vespers, hammerheads and Valkyries, and then the heavy drones at the bottom, things like the Praetor, the Wasp, the Ogre, and the Berserker. We're going to ignore things like the Curator and the Warden. Those are static drones, and that's another topic for another video. But again, the heavy drones and the medium drones can ultimately be safely ignored at this point in time too, simply because the ship we are talking about, which is to say our Algosh, cannot fire them. So ultimately you buy yourself a load of these drones, you have them shipped to wherever you're going, and you go into your fitting, you equip them to your ship, and then off you go. Now that is why I'm here at Damelin, because I'm going to jump out into a combat scenario and showcase this in action. Before we go though, let's have a brief look at those skills that I mentioned. You can see I'm actually training drones at the moment, but if we go to the full skill tree and into weapon technology, at the bottom there is the drones menu. Now the most important ones you are going to need here are, first of all, right down the bottom here, drones. If I open this up for the full view, you'll see drone control number. Normally you can only control a single drone. Level this to level 1, you can control 2 drones. Take it to level 3 and you get +2 drone control number, meaning a total of 3 drones. The Algosh has 3 launch tubes, therefore you need this the drone skill to level 3 in order to best utilize that. The drone control range is how far away from your drones you can be and they will still operate. That's useful because ultimately drone ships don't tend to have turrets or things themselves, so you want to pull your ship back to a safe range well away from your opponent's guns and send your drones in. Obviously the higher that you take this skill, the further back you can pull. I would recommend rushing this to level 3 so that you can use all 3 launch tubes as soon as possible, then later on taking on level 4 and level 5 to add a little bit of extra safety to your ship to be able to pull back. Of course, beyond that, the Algosh is launching small drones or light drones, therefore light drone operation is going to be useful, simply because it increases the damage that light drones do, their tracking speed and their optimal range, and then light drone upgrade again increases their damage and their accuracy fall off. Those are skills that are really useful just to have if you're using drones. Of course, beyond that, things like, because this ship, as I said, it's a shield tank, it's an armor tank, I'm talking out my backside, it's an armor tank, you're going to want to go into things like maintenance technology and load up your armor operation skill there as well, just to get the armor repair duration down and the activation cost down. Simple as that. Okay, so those are your main skills. Go for drones as a matter of importance, at least to level 3, then start pulling up light drones operation and light drone upgrade, and then consider the other aspects of your ship as well. As I said, with the Algosh here, it is a defense ship for using armor. That is what I would spec into, particularly on this one. Offense, as you can see here, this isn't quite as good as my Thrasher 2, but then again the Thrasher 2 is a tier 2 destroyer. This is only an Algosh. You can go for an Algosh. Algosh 2 I think is a thing. I'm not sure, I might be talking out my backside again there, but either way I'm not skilled as heavily into drones as I am into light turrets. Light projectile turrets, so the DPS on this is lower than my Thrasher 2. Don't take that as a bad thing. Ultimately, this is still a very powerful ship, so I'm going to undock, jump to the mission site, and we're going to have a look at this thing in action. And here we are now coming to the mission site. Now I do apologise in advance, my Wi-Fi is terrible out here, and when I did a practice run earlier, I did very nearly lose my ship, so we're going to have a go at this, and I may have to pull away to safety at a moment's notice. So I'm going to lock on as usual. I am then going to ultimately try orbiting at a fairly distant range of about 15. We're going to target this Thrasher here. I'm going to send my 3 drones out of their tubes by tapping on them. That'll launch them into space, and you'll see there's a ring around them in just a moment. You then tap them again. That will now send them into combat against their target. I'm also going to whack that drone damage amplifier on just to really kick up the damage. Now I mentioned as well that alongside on this ship it has an assault mode. This is this thing in the bottom right, and if I tap that you'll see it put me into normal mode, wait for it to cool down, and we'll go back into assault mode just to showcase what it does. There goes that first target. My drones should reallocate to their nearest threat. Let's go back into assault mode. And you'll see that assault mode there, capacitor recharge and signature radius goes up, but flight velocity is much faster. Yes, I'm getting utterly hammered here. I am going to need to pull out of this in just a moment. Ultimately, this ship is not very well defended for a mission like this. I'm taking damage quite heavily against these particular opponents, but you can see the damage that my drones are doing. I'm going to warp out of this one because I really don't want to lose this ship in a video live. That would be quite embarrassing, although it does look like I could be about to, so let's hope I get out of here in time. Please align and warp. Don't embarrass me in front of all my subscribers. There we go. Now, that's not a great example. I can't really showcase how powerful drones can be on this particular mission, but quite frankly, at this point in time, it's Christmas Eve as I'm filming this. I don't have the capability, really, sadly, to go around and find a slightly easier mission for me to do, or an easier anomaly. I have looked in a load of the nearby systems. There just isn't anything, I'm afraid, other than, like, level 1 missions, which are just ridiculously easy and don't showcase anything. So I'd rather showcase how they do against the level 6 threat there, and just show you how those drones actually operate. Now, the key points I want you to take away from that are that when you go into combat with drones, you first have to launch them into space. At that point, they are orbiting your ship. You have those 3 drones in space orbiting your ship, doing their own thing. You then have to tap on them again in order to actually send them off to a target. Once they're on a target, you can tap a drone and it will bring it back to orbit your ship. This means you can dance in and out and send at different ships as you require. In a fleet, that is an incredibly powerful tool with drones. Also, as I said, if you can pull back to a safer range and your drones are a long range away because you've got the skill fairly high, you can do a lot of damage to your opponents from a very great deal of safety. Now, that makes drones incredibly powerful in the right hands. For this particular mission, I'm not quite skilled up ready enough for it. This mission does suggest like tier 6, tier 7, with a destroyer or a cruiser. So I'm kind of going in a little bit under-equipped here, but I just kind of wanted to showcase what drones are and how they work to give you a vague idea. I find drones a lot of fun. I don't really use them all that much in the game. I tend to be a light projectile turret kind of person, just because I love the Minmatar ships, but let's be fair, the Algosh is a very cool looking ship, and drones are super powerful. Now, on the subject of drones, it is worth mentioning that yes, there are things, as I said, like logistics drones and mining drones. They're not in the game yet, so we are not going to discuss them here. When those are released, I will do a video discussing how to use those particular drones as well. Anyway, folks, that just about wraps up everything that I wanted to say here regarding drones and the Gallente Algosh. You've had a look at what you can equip onto a ship like this. I've had a look at how the drones actually operate in the field and what you can do with them. I do hope you find that useful. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments what you want to see in future videos. Otherwise, happy sailing and see you in New Eden.